Man, this smoke over LA, it's like we're living in a permanent campfire.
I know, it's crazy.
And you know what happens when there's smoke, right? Everybody's got a theory.
Oh, yeah.
Everything from careless campers to like some really out there stuff.
You see it all over the internet.
But we're all about facts here. So let's ditch the speculation and take a deep dive into the real causes behind these LA fires. We're talking about natural factors, human actions, the whole 9 yards.
Exactly. Got to look at everything. We've been poring over all these reports, scientific analyses, even, ventured into some conspiracy theory territory, all to try and understand what's really going on.
And it is a lot to understand. I mean, hundreds of thousands of acres have burned. It's
Yeah.
almost impossible to wrap your head around the scale of it all.
It's staggering.
So where do we even start?
Well, you have to start with the basics, right?
Yeah.
California's climate, it's kind of like a wildfire waiting to happen. Dry summers, low humidity, and then you throw in those Santa Ana winds. It's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, growing up, I always heard those Smokey Bear warnings. Only you can prevent forest fires, but honestly, I didn't really get it. Well, it felt kind of overblown.
Sure.
But after seeing this devastation,
Yeah, it hits different,
it hits different for sure.
for sure. But there's this interesting twist. California's native chaparral ecosystem, it's actually meant to burn.
Really?
It's part of the natural cycle. Think of it like, oh, imagine a pine cone. You know how some pine cones need the heat from a fire to release their seeds?
Oh, right.
Well, some chaparral plants work the same way. Fire helps them regenerate. But here's the problem. With climate change, we're getting these massive, super intense fires that are just too much.
Oh, I see.
They just wipe everything out, and those seeds don't stand a chance.
Wow. I had no idea those plants actually depend on fire.
Yeah.
But if climate change is messing with that whole natural balance, what happens to, like, the entire ecosystem?
Well, everything is connected, right? So you see these cascading effects. You've got
Oh.
whole plant and animal communities that are at risk.
Mm.
Take the California quail, for example.
All right.
They rely on the chaparral for food and shelter, but these intense fires, they're destroying their habitat. Quail populations just can't recover fast enough.
So you've got this natural tinderbox situation, and then you add in climate change, which just throws gasoline on the fire, so to speak.
Yeah, pretty much.
But what about, the human element? Besides those accidental fires that always happen, there's that question of arson.
Right, right. And it's easy to jump to that conclusion, right? You see fires and you think arson. And look, the motives are definitely there. You've got land development, eco-terrorism, even just, plain old pyromania.
Right.
But it's dangerous to point fingers without solid evidence.
And speaking of pointing fingers without evidence, what about that whole directed energy weapon theory? I've seen that floating around online. Come on, that's got to be a stretch, right?
Let's just say there's absolutely no credible evidence to back that up.
Yeah.
It's a cool idea for a movie, maybe, but in the real world, we got to stick to the facts.
Okay, back to reality then. The reports we have point to a mix of, those super dry conditions plus some accidental human actions. Stuff like downed power lines, things like that.
Exactly.
But I'm guessing the investigations are still going on.
Absolutely. You can't rush these things, especially with a disaster this massive. And, arson, statistically speaking, it's pretty rare.
Okay.
But it does happen. So we have to let investigators do their thing and figure out what really happened.
Now, I know some folks out there are saying these fires, they're no worse than what we've seen in the past. But what does the data tell us? Does it back that up or, paint a different picture?
The data is pretty clear on this one. Fire seasons are getting longer. That's a fact. And the fires themselves, they're burning hotter, they're spreading faster, and the total area that's burning is increasing. It's a trend you just can't ignore.
So where does this leave us? We've got the natural factors, the accidental fires, and then looming over everything, climate change. What's the takeaway? What do we do with all this?
Well, we got to be proactive. We can't just sit around and wait for the next firestorm.
Right.
We need to adapt our infrastructure to make it more fire resistant. We need to manage our forests responsibly. And most importantly, we've got to tackle the root causes of climate change.
It's a sobering thought. But these fires, they're a wake-up call, right?
Yeah.
They show us that this isn't just a California problem. It's the global issue that we all need to pay attention to. And we need to act. So here's a question for everyone listening. If these mega fires are the new normal, what can we do as individuals and as communities to reduce the risk and protect ourselves and the environment? It's a challenge, no doubt, but it's one we have to face head on.